The Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is triggers. And what are triggers? What's actually going on when we get triggered? We're kind of being bounced back into our past or a pattern from our past. And we're going to have a look today at how instead of getting locked into this regressive pattern, we can actually use our triggers to precipitate growth and transformation. So before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells and your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells and your molecules and your electrons, and creating this brilliant beam of light from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's place our palms together. Rub your hands vigorously together to feel the friction and the temperature and the texture. And then when you stop, feel the buzzing in your hands and allow all that sensation to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. So glad to have you here with us this morning, and welcome to everybody else who's joining us. I realize I forgot to put on my virtual background. I wonder if I should do that now. Why not, right? So we get to experience that transformation too. How about that? Collectively. So there we go. There's the background. And yeah, we're talking about triggers. So what is a trigger? A trigger is this it's kind of a potential, little minefield waiting to be activated by something that reminds us of an experience or a pattern of our past. And I don't know if you guys, this is a really old reference, but I think it was the Three Stooges. And there was this talk about, well, for whatever reason, and I don't know the origin story of it, but if somebody said Niagara Falls, that was a trigger. And the one character would just say, slowly I turned, step by step, inch by inch. And that's all I remember of it. But whenever the words Niagara Falls were spoken, that triggered this pattern and behavior. And that's so true for so many of us, that a sideways look or a certain phrase or a certain tone of voice, or, a multitude of things can just serve as a trigger to activate this patterned behavior where we become rather robotic in acting out our response or our reaction to that trigger. And we're all about transformation and growth here, right? So the question is, how do we utilize those triggers to serve us rather than being at the effect of them, rather than becoming this robotic force? How do we transform these triggered moments into something that actually serves us? And we've been talking about that a bit recently, is that we can look at what does that trigger stimulate within us? What are the feelings that get generated? We may not even know what the exact trigger is, but maybe we get to look at how do we identify a trigger. So when we have a dramatic emotional reaction to something that is disproportionate with the circumstance, or that is incongruous with the circumstance, we can typically identify that as a triggering moment, or our response we can identify as having been triggered. So by the way, if you guys are putting comments in the chat and I'm not responding, it's because I don't see the comments. So if you want to participate, which would be awesome, please go to the Enlightened World Network Facebook page or the Enlightened World Network YouTube channel and enter your comments there, and then I'll see them and be able to respond. So I guess the first step in this whole conversation about turning triggers into gifts has to do with being able to identify that trigger in the first place, right? And so when we have a big emotional response, as we just said, that's kind of disproportionate with whatever is going on that may have incited that response, then that's a good clue that we got triggered. And what happens in that moment of being triggered is that we get catapulted out of the present moment and back into this patterned response. And in other words, we kind of lose presence, we lose control, we lose our ability to, in that moment, to truly engage as a responsible person. Rosalind says, require the brain to make a connection between the thought and what is felt. That, I guess that's what's taking place when we are recognizing that we've been triggered. Oftentimes we typically only recognize that we've been triggered in retrospect after we've acted out the triggering behavior. It's not that often that we can nip it in the bud, like in the moment that we experience that trigger. Typically it takes a little bit of time, like we go down the rabbit hole a bit before we can recapture our sense of self, reconnect with our conscious awareness and intention, because we just got to go off on this. It's like turning on a program in your computer. The program just runs. It sets up. That's what we do. Oh my, excuse me. Sorry about that. Anyway, I think this is an interesting thing to be looking at. Like, what are the dynamics of a trigger? How does it happen? How do we interact with it? Rosalind says, the pause will save you from doing something that you may regret several hours later. Yes, 100%. So if we can find a way to activate that awareness when it happens, or very shortly after, if we can program ourselves in those moments to take a breath rather than just going right into the reaction, if we could count to 3 to give ourselves a pause in order to create a little bit of distance from the automatic response, then that's a huge gift that we can give ourselves, I promise. Because as you said, Rosalind, if we don't step back, then we're just perpetuating a pattern that typically is going to have some fallout that we're going to have to contend with in some way or another, right? So let's look at what kinds of things can be triggering. You know, like, let's say we've grown up with lots of being pretty heavily controlled, lots of domination, control, people dictating our schedules, people telling us what to do, and maybe there was lots of pain around that. And then somebody says, well, you have to whatever it is. And oh boy, there it is, that it just turns on that trigger, and all of a sudden we're on automatic pilot, and all this rage from all those years just comes bubbling up, and we have a hugely disproportionate response to, you know, who do you think you are to tell me what to do, or whatever it is, right? So Rosalind says, is trigger the same as reactivity, a perceived threat like impeding freedom and not free to choose? I think that when we are triggered, it does trigger reactivity. It is the same, because we don't have the capability in that moment when of being triggered to be responsive. We're hearing from the past, we're experiencing all the emotion, the pent-up emotion from the past, and then projecting it into this moment. And the key to what you said here, Rosalind, is a perceived threat, like impeding our freedom and not having freedom to choose. So the perceived threat is the thing. So when we're triggered, what's really happening is that our doors of perception kind of slam shut and say, this is what just happened. It can be a total misperception. It can be a total misperception. Even somebody saying, well, you have to do this, that, and the other thing. The words have to could be the trigger. And then beyond that, all I'm seeing is this person's trying to control and dominate me. You know, and they could have just been saying, well, this is, you have to do this, 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 and this, and that's how this works. And it may just be the way they languaged it, and it could have been completely benign conversation. But if have to is a trigger for me, then all of a sudden I'm perceiving the threat of domination and control. And now I'm no longer in the present. I'm no longer in relationship to this person. I'm no longer in this interaction. And my response is coming out of the past and the pent-up emotions I may have, right? And so how do we address these triggers? Well, The first thing that we can do is bring awareness that we got triggered in the first place. That's the first step, so I guess with AA, the first step is to acknowledge that there's an issue, right? So in this case, to recognize I got triggered, that's an issue. Not and our tendency is to say, you did this to me, or you are this way, and that's why I'm this way, or it's you did something. And whatever the you that did something did, that's one part of the conversation, because maybe the action, maybe the thing that happened was egregious in its own right. That's possible. And the fact that it created such a reaction, that's on us. That's what we get to contend with. That's where we get to take ownership. That's where we get to cultivate our sovereignty and our strength and our wholeness. Because if somebody can say something and we go off like that, then we're not at choice. And so what we get to do then is to look at, well, what did that stimulate in me? What did that activate? What did that ignite in me that then went off on this whole big tirade? And when we are willing to look at those questions, then we can start getting an inroad, regardless of whether that person was right or wrong or horrible or not in what they did. We get to look at what's going on here as well, and to say, wow, that just, I'm enraged. Why am I enraged? What's going on underneath the rage? Well, I feel threatened. And how do I feel threatened? Well, I feel that person just jeopardized my safety, or took away my security, or is trying to control me. So if that person's trying to control me, what's going on with me about being controlled, that I wigged out and got so upset? What wound is there? Like, where did I feel controlled in my life and out of control in my life? And what does it take? What can I heal within me to restore my sense of self-control, to restore my sovereignty, or my sense of sovereignty, to restore my sense of personal power? Perhaps I was feeling powerless. I was feeling victimized. What can I do to restore my sense of wholeness? And in terms of answers around what can I do, sometimes that's inner child work. Sometimes it's finding that wounded part of ourselves and expressing compassion and love and care toward it, understanding toward it, presence, just saying, hey, I'm here. The adult me, the adult in the room has some presence to share with you, to recognize how painful it could have been to feel powerless and to feel used and abused and disregarded. And then we get to be able to give that regard and that comfort and care to ourselves. Why is it important to be able to do that? Because the only thing that is really, truly, potentially within our control is our own behavior. We can't control what other people do. So one of the things that I learned when I was learning NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, is that when we're creating a desired outcome, we need to create a desired outcome that is within our control. So if my desired outcome is that so-and-so treats me better, I can't really control that. What my desired outcome could be is that I express more clearly my desire for them to treat me differently, or that I choose not to subject myself to that kind of behavior, but I can't control how someone else is going to treat me, right? And we spend a lot of our energy and effort trying to control other people's behavior, right? To lay down rules for other people and to make them comply. We can ask, we can request, we can set up structures that strong arm people into certain behaviors or whatever, but we can't make somebody behave in a certain way. So to make our well-being dependent upon how somebody else treats us is not something that allows us to be the shepherds of our own lives. If I'm relying on the way you treat me to feel a certain way, you know, I can choose not to be there. I can choose not to subject myself to that. I can choose to try to get you to change your behavior, but I can't control it. So Rosalind says, the veil about being with someone who makes me happy is being lifted. Ooh, this is exciting, Rosalind. The truth is, happiness is something I create on my own. Yay. Being with someone who adds to it. Yes, 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 yes. So this is a really big deal. So nobody makes us happy. We allow ourselves to be happy with someone. Somebody might do things that we then respond to with joy. And that joy is really coming from within. There are things that we enjoy and things that we don't enjoy so much, right? And so when we put ourselves around someone that does things that are connected with our joy, then that's awesome, right? But they're not making us happy. They're doing what they're doing, and we're being happy. And yes, there's a correlation and an interplay. And there's also our own wiring. So I'm not denying that we feel happier with certain people than we do with others, and that certain behavior patterns make us, or we respond to certain behavior patterns more joyfully, or circumstance patterns more joyfully than others. But the thing is that when maybe what's happening is that the behavior patterns that this other person does trigger our happiness. Like, triggers aren't necessarily all bad things, right? We talk about being triggered as a negative thing, but people can do stuff that triggers our heart to open, that triggers our joy. And And those triggers might be worth nourishing, right? The things that are the responsiveness, oh, I feel really cared for and loved. That triggers my, like you bring me flowers or whatever, that may trigger an opening of my heart and feeling appreciated. So again, it's a trigger, meaning that we're then bound in some way to externalities that are dictating our well-being. If we become reliant upon those externalities for our well-being, it looks like you make me feel good, you make me feel bad, versus I really enjoy the way I feel when I'm with you. I really enjoy our interaction. There's the thing is that if we empower others to dictate our state, then that's all lovely when things are good, right? But when things aren't good, then what? Then it's their fault. Get rid of them and that'll get rid of the problem. Sometimes that's the case. Sometimes it is the case that, the interaction's just toxic and you get to relieve yourself of it. However, it may be that toxic interaction holds the seeds of some wonderful gifts. Maybe you can, it's both and, maybe you get to remove yourself from the toxic interaction and also discover what the gift is in it. To say, oh, okay, so what I get is that this person doesn't value me or my thoughts or my values or my beliefs or my way of being, and I get to recognize that I can choose to be around people that value me more. It feels better to me. I feel better in those circumstances, and I choose to value me. It's okay that they don't value me, and I don't need to keep engaging with that. I don't need to prove myself. I don't need to make them try to value me. I don't need to try to make them value me. I don't have to prove my value to them, right? And oftentimes we get triggered by people showing us aspects of ourselves that we don't want to see. Somebody reflects something back to us that doesn't feel particularly flattering or comfortable. Sometimes that'll trigger us, right? If somebody says, you're a liar, and you're not a liar, if you really truly know that and feel secure in yourself, then that's not going to be a trigger. It's like, well, actually, I'm not. But if you have a sense of yourself not being fully honest with yourself or others, somebody calling you a liar could really, really be upsetting, right? Why? Because it's triggering that part of you or me that isn't in alignment with myself, with my own honesty, with my own truth, right? So when people call us names, if we get reactive about that, then we get to look at what's the reaction. Maybe the reaction is, wow, they're just not seeing me. And so maybe I'm having a reaction about not being seen. That could be. In any case, let's look at the things that we get triggered by. And rather than making it about the other person or wholly about the other person, let's look at what we might be able to learn about ourselves and use that as an opportunity for our personal growth. Because the triggers, when we recognize them, could be a gift. You know, I think what we often try to do is to have other people, you know, use our triggers to say, well, you triggered me, and you know that's a trigger for me, so you need to stop doing that. And we try to control other people's behaviors. We can't do that. I mean, we can't reliably expect to have everybody else dancing around our triggers. We get to diffuse them. So anyway, that's it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page at 9 a.m. Eastern. And Rosalind says, what can we do to bring about peace, whether the condition is there or not? The wisdom you are rooted to will help cultivate peace, whatever you are doing. Well, I think one of the ways that we get to bring about peace is taking responsibility for our experience. That's one way. And when we do that, as we heal ourselves, we have a better capacity to interface with others where previously our peace may have been disrupted. And constant peace, I think there's a dynamic flow, ebbs and flows. We don't want like a flat line. We want these dynamic ebbs and flows that allow us to grow and emerge and evolve. So as we cultivate wholeness, then we cultivate a greater ability for surfing those dynamic changes. That's what I'm thinking about. Anyway, I just want to say thank you. Deep, deep gratitude for our time together and for your engagement. And I just have such deep appreciation. So please check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network and Enlightened World Living and EWN One with the Earth. And until next time, so much love to you.